Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makakadash, and the Heavenly Father. True name is Yahweh, and His unbegotten Son, Bahashem, in the name of Hamashiach Habashai. Those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, the last one, Clash of the tongue. And I say, Barak Thumb to the elders and apostles, while I keep my Akbaf, and I say, Shalom. And this is a sit down lesson of this recent news article from CNBC.com, updated Tuesday, July 15, 2025 at 4:17 p.m. Published by Pat Shang and Sarah Mann from CBS.com. CNBC.com, a bit sick. And it reads, it says the Dow Jones dropped 400 points. Earnings, inflation woes, Nvidia lifts Nasdaq to record close. It says traders work on the floor at New York Stock Exchange in New York City on July 15, 2025. Published by Janelle Moon from the Reuters. It says the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell Tuesday as is worried over inflation, and a mixed bag of banks' earnings dragged the blue chip index lower. The Nasdaq Composite, meanwhile, got a boost from the gains in Nvidia. The 30-year stock down. Lost 436.36 points in the negatives, or 0.9%, and closed at 44,023.29. Monopoly, they lost. The Dow Jones was down, I would say, like a negative 120 something points after yesterday's move too. So it's on the second day losing trade once again. As this time around, it's down 436 points. As it was yesterday, down 100 points. Now it's down to 436 points a day later. It says the S&P 500 lost 0.40% and closed at a 6,243.71, easing from a fresh record high reached earlier in the session. It says the Nasdaq was outperformed, adding that 0.82% and posting a record close of 20,677.80. The tech-heavy Nasdaq was aided by a 4% raise in Nvidia shares after the chip company, and it hopes to soon resume deliveries of its H2O GP sales to China. The June inflation data released Tuesday representing an increase from many levels, despite the headlines numbers matching expectations. The consumer pricing index increased 0.3% on the month, putting the annual inflation at 2.7%. Yeah, it was from a scale of 2.9 to 2.7%. It says matching consensus poll from the Dow Jones so-called Pro CPI, which inclusive food and energy prices grew 0.2 month over month, slightly less than expected over a year, expanded by 2.9, matching the estimate. The print spurs fears about the impact of President Donald Trump tariffs. Trump on Saturday said that the U.S. imposed 30% tariffs on the goods from European Union and Mexico. Most likely, we're going to see if Mexico and the European Union are going to respond just like they did before, starting August the 1st. It says the latest inflation reportedly practically performs that President Trump's tariffs act to push up consumer prices in June, saying Matthew Ryan, head of market strategy at the Global Finance from firm area. It says while there was a mild miss in the core of number, but the main underlying inflation measures are now printed at the highest level in 4 months. The big fear of the Fed officials that the stormy waters lies ahead.
Especially I got my life insurance, I keep my shit. I don't be on shit, I'll be chilling.
While there's a mild miss with the core number, but the main underlying inflation measures are now pointing at the highest level in 4 months. The big fears for the Fed officials is that the stormy waters lies ahead, as not only is there time lag between the tariffs and an increase into prices, but additional tariffs hikes on August the 1st would almost certainly hurt via further inflation pressures ahead. Ryan added. The Skyler Winner chief, if I pronounce that his name, or not if I pronounce that name right, it says the chief investor officials at the Region Capital says it was a relief to see Tuesday's CPI report coming in line with the expectations that it is highly likely that a tariff-driven inflation rate reckoning is coming. It says on the earnings front print from several finance heavyweights fails to impress investors. It says Fargo beat earnings, but a reduction in net interest income guided shares lower than more than 5% shares. JP Morgan Chase edged lower 1B, even though the bank proposes a better than expected second quarter results, driven by strong trading and investment banking revenues assets. Managers BlackRock slipped near 6% of their quarterly revenue miss. Citigroup buckled in negative trend in finance, raising more than 3% after the bank toppled second quarter estimates. Wall Street is hoping that a second quarter earnings sessions will boost the stock markets. That's already at near all-time highs. Expectations are lower ahead of the reports. However, the S&P 500 is projected to post a blended earnings growth 4.3% over a year basis, according to the fact set data. That it will mark the lowest growth for the index to go back fourth quarter in 2023. See that bring that news article up. It says, however, it says the annual rate as measured by the consumer price index 2.7, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. However, the core inflation, which includes foods and energy prices, is at 2.9. This means that while overflowing inflation is slightly lower, the price of goods and services, exclusive foods and energy, are increasing at a faster rate. Right, due to these tariffs. It says the impact of tariffs. Some economists suggest that the tariffs imposed by the previous administration are contributing to the rise in certain durable good prices. The Federal Reserve responds. It says the Federal Reserve closely monitors inflation data and may adjust interest rates to manage the price stability. The current inflation data suggests that they may maintain a wait-and-see approach. It says U.S. consumer prices rise high June as tariff pass-through begins. Right, because those tariffs comes into August 1st comes to effect. So that potentially it said it may potentially affect your everyday consumer. It says June CPI tariffs are finally hitting U.S. consumer wallets. Hitting consumer wallets. And this is from the Morningstar. It says latest inflation shows prices rose for furniture, toys, apparels, and appliances, all brought into an impact of tariffs. Right, because it's going to impact once that new tariffs rolls in come to effect August the 1st. So that's going to affect your everyday consumer here in the United States and around the world as well too. Especially Donald Trump using these economic tariffs on these nations, and most likely these nations they might not respond back, just like Japan did. And it was another country, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot the name of it. But we definitely see these other nations going to respond back. They're going to use their implementing, opposing their tariffs on the United States as well too. It says economics says the impact of President tariffs were visible in the CPI, with the prices rising for furniture, tools, and appliances. Prices for new used car fell, happy to offset gains in other areas. A July Fed interest rate cut unlikely. Pence is unlikely, and the analyst sees roughly 50% odds of a cut in September. The inflation accelerated slightly in June as President Donald Trump tariffs on trading partners around the globe begins to put an upward pressure on consumer prices. Yeah, it's going to continue to increase as it was at 2.7, 2.9 consumer spending. The inflation rate is real too. It says the effect was most pronounced during durable goods, including furniture, toys, and April's and appliances. Overall, the June Consumer Price Index report shows that the inflation rose to 2.7% annual rate in June, 0.3% on a monthly basis, higher than May's more new report. Excluding volatile foods and energy prices, and inflation rose to 2.9% on an annual basis. Today's reports highlight that the impact from tariffs are taking effect, that the high import prices are being passed on consumers. Yeah, passed on consumers, your everyday American consumer. Saying that Morningstar Wealth Chief Multi-Asset Strategist Dominic Pellermore says, but even as consumer prices ticking up slightly, Morningstar senior U.S. economist Christian Caldwell noted that for now, the U.S. firms are shouldering most of the tariffs are tariff burden. He said that the dynamic will likely change in the second half of the year as companies looking to bolster their profits. It says inflation rose to 2.7% in June. Pay attention to the core numbers. It says inflation's pick up again. June rising to 2.7 annual rate. The key points: the consumer prices of broad-based measures, goods and services costs, increase 0.3% on the month, putting 12-month inflation rate at 2.7 and in line with expectations. The core inflation picked up 0.2% on a month, with the annual rate moving to 2.9%. It says the annual rate in line in estimates, while the evidence says June was mixed on how much influence tariffs have over prices. There were signs that the duties are having an impact of tariffs on home furniture, and prices rose, though vehicles prices fell. President Donald Trump used the report to initiate another call for Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. And I believe the Jeremy Powell of the Fed says most likely they're not going to lower the interest rates. It's still going to remain the same, unlikely, until more reports comes in. But as of right now, there's a mixed reaction of it. But we definitely see the inflation rose to 2.9% from 2.7 to 2.9%. Slocky. It's the book of Jeremiah. Because America represents modern day spiritually Babylon the Great. This is Jeremiah chapter 51. Yeah, it's the book of Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 9. It says, we would have hail Babylon, but she is not hailed, forsaking her lands. Go ahead to your own country, for her judgments to heaven circumcised. Right, so there's no healing for modern day Babylon the Great. Much is trying to bounce back, but we're going to see the full downfall of it. And we're seeing signs of that. So with that, hopefully this sit-down lesson was edifying of this recent news article from July the 15th, 2025 at 4:17 p.m. Eastern Time from CNBC.com, published by Pat Sam and Sarah Mann. updated July the 15th, 2025 at 4:17 p.m. and it reads again. The Dow Jones dropped 400 points on earnings, inflation woes. Nvidia lifts Nasdaq to record close. Live updates. So with that, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Wakar Kadash, and the Heavenly Father. True name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Bahashem, in the names of Hamashiach Kabashah. Know all their true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, the last one Kadash tongue. And I say rock thumb to the elders and apostles. Well, I can until next time. Say shalom.